all my job seekers out there. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 3 most common mistakes that nearly everyone makes at interviews and how you can avoid them in order to stand out at the interview. Before I get started, remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and also download my free interview preparation guide, which teaches you everything about how to prepare for an interview effectively in order to have confidence at the interview. So I'll leave the link below. Done all of that already? Then let's go. You might find this surprising, but the most common mistake that nearly everyone makes at interviews is not preparing for the "tell me about yourself" question. Most people actually think they can just wing this question because nobody knows you more than you. So you should be able to just answer that question on the spot when asked, right? Not necessarily true. Mainly because if you do not prepare for this answer, what's going to happen is you're going to be caught off guard, and then you're going to get nervous and end up talking about a whole lot of irrelevant things rather than what the interviewer wants to hear. So what you need to do in this situation is practice an elevator pitch. This video is not about how to answer "tell me about yourself" questions, so I'm not going to go in depth on this point. However, what I will mention is that you need to practice an elevator pitch, which is basically an overview of all of your skills and experience that you can just summarize in about a minute and be able to have that at hand when they ask you about the "tell me about yourself" question. You should only be talking about your professional self in the elevator pitch, because another mistake that people make in regards to this question is because they're caught off guard, they start talking generally about their personal life. So they start talking about their hobbies, how much children they have, and just basically their self in general. You should only limit it to your professional self, your skills, your experience, and your interest in the job. That is literally it for the elevator pitch, which should only be about a minute long. The second most common mistake that many job seekers make is not providing specific examples for behavioral-based questions. A behavioral-based question is a question that requires the interviewee to provide a particular example where they've demonstrated a certain skill or work experience in order for the employer to determine whether they're suitable for the position. So a typical example of this would be an interviewer asking you to describe a difficult situation and how you handled it. Where people go wrong with this question is, instead of giving specific examples of when they've demonstrated a certain skill of experience, they just answer the question in general terms. For example, they might say, "Well, what I usually do in this situation is da-da-da-da-da," rather than actually giving an actual time when they've demonstrated that skill. In order to prevent yourself from falling into the same mistake at interviews, what you need to do is have pre-planned behavioral answers already available that you've already thought about and you can say at the interview. I would suggest sitting down and really thinking about 3 to 5 examples of when you've demonstrated a certain skill, when you've handled a difficult situation, things of that nature, so that when the interviewer does ask you that question, you're just ready to go with the answer and nothing seems, out of place. You just seem to just answer the question effectively and give the interviewer exactly what they want to hear so that they can see you as a good fit for the position. The third and final mistake, which I think nearly everyone at some point in their life has made at an interview, is not asking questions. Mainly because a lot of us look at the interview as an interrogation rather than a two-way conversation. We're looking at it as though, the interviewer is asking us questions to determine whether we're the right fit, and we're just supposed to answer all of those questions to prove that we're the right fit, and that's literally the whole structure of the interview. There's nothing else to it. While that is an aspect of the interview, that's not the full story. Asking questions at the interview actually shows that you're an enthusiastic candidate and you actually care about the company. You're actually interested in what they do, and that really makes you stand out as a potentially perfect client for the position. So asking questions is also a benefit for you because it gives you insight into the company, and then you can decide whether it's even a company for you or not by asking questions. So it makes you look super assertive at the interview, which is how you want to look in the interviewer's eye. Remember to leave your questions to the ending of the interview when the interviewer has already asked all of his questions and then asks you, do you have any questions? You have to be careful about this step though, because you don't want to ask a question that you could have easily found on the company website. You want to ask a question that is a really good question that you've really had time to sit down and think about, so that when you give that question to the interviewer will actually be impressed by the question you've given. The best way to do this is to actually, the night before the interview, prepare some good questions that you would like to ask the interviewer at the interview, so that when he asks you about the question, you've already got those questions in your head and you can just bring them forth. Those are the 3 most common mistakes that everyone makes at interviews and how you can avoid them. If you feel like you understand these mistakes and how you can avoid them at interviews, then comment below, yes, I understand. And let's recap everything before we close. First mistake was not preparing an answer for the tell me about yourself question. So for this, we talked about, creating an elevator pitch beforehand, making sure it's no longer than a minute long, and making sure that it's only talking about your professional self. So, your skills, your experience, and your interest in the job. Second mistake was not preparing specific examples for behavioral based questions. So you have to actually think of an actual incident or example of when you've actually demonstrated a skill or work experience. Remember to think about 3 to 5 examples so you have one at the top of your head when they ask you such questions. The third mistake was obviously not asking questions. So remember to always have pre-planned questions to ask at an interview so that you can ask it at the end of the interview. Never ever leave the interview without asking questions. If you've experienced any of these mistakes, then share your story by commenting below. Now you know how to avoid the most common interview mistakes at your next interview, but you can't do that effectively without knowing how to fully prepare for an interview in order to ace that interview and be more confident. So if you want to know how to do that effectively, remember to download my free interview preparation guide, which teaches you everything about how to prepare for the interview in order to have confidence to ace that interview. So I'll leave the link below. So we've come to the end now. I hope you found that helpful. If you have, then press like. If you haven't subscribed already, remember to subscribe to my channel for weekly videos on how to pass that interview and get that job that you desire. See you in my next video.